This,
I don't think we do.
so I think it's a.
We're live?
it's an
Okay.
informal meeting.
We are live. So this Joint Transportation Highways Military Affairs Committee to discuss interim topics. So I think all of you have a list of some of these that were generated. And I think we'll just quickly go through this, see if members of the committee have other topics before we open it up to the public. So first on the list is, and I'm looking at a sheet I have here. So it's a one pager. So the rest of you are on it that Kim put together for us. Thank you, Kim. So first off is military affairs. We have the Oregon Trail State Veteran Cemetery and protecting that from development and encroachment. And at any point, stop me if you have any comments or want to add to these. Sponsoring a recruiting and retention program for Wyoming Guardsmen. Oversight of military sexual harassment lawsuits, claims, and processes. And that through a neutral party, maybe the Department of Workforce Services. Temporary delegation of parental authority due to employment, et cetera, which I think is a major issue we need to talk about. We've addressed it a little bit in the past, but I think we can combine a lot of those piecemeal legislations into kind of a unified approach.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
So just as a pause on the military affairs front, I apologize, committee. I did not put the bill number, but there was actually a bill filed in this session. Apologize, I should have had this on. I think it has chance to help our military, but also, could have statewide ramifications, even for families not in the military. And so this oversight of the military lawsuits and claims and the interaction piece with our state government have worked a little bit with Senator Ellis, who is here, and in a minute we can certainly get some comments from her, Mr. Chairman, wherever you want to put that in.
Okay. Right. Heather, do you happen to recall the number on that bill that Chairman Landon was mentioning? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make a note. So there's no sense redoing a bunch of stuff. We already have a basis. Thank you. Okay, Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if we do work on the Veterans Cemetery, I hope that we could do that at a meeting in Casper and have a tour of that. And I would just like to say, we should be so proud of that facility. That is just a wonderful addition to the state, and maybe working a tour of the Wyoming Veterans Museum at the same time. I'd be happy to work on that and make those arrangements, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, I'm making notes. So if I don't say anything, it doesn't mean I'm ignoring anybody. I can't talk and write at the same time. Okay.
Did everybody hear that?
I think everyone heard that.
Okay.
Okay. Any? Yes.
There is one thing that because of the technology evolved over the past year, throughout the state are becoming where to have the
Okay.
That is the only I'm doubting that meaning.
Okay.
We don't run into glitches as well. So it's less likely that we will run into.
Okay, Heather, and that brings up a good point for the committee and the people in the room and on the Zoom. Management Council is still considering how we will do interim committee meetings, whether we will continue with Zoom attendance or go back to our way it was in the past with in-person contributions and in-person testimony. But that's up to Management Council, which they will meet on the 15th and 16th, if I remember my calendar correctly.
And,
So-
and Mr. Chairman, just to share with the committee and with our audience, the two chairmen would like to get back out on the road. I think it's time for us to go meet with our constituents and get out around the state again. I think we do better work when we do that. And so that's certainly what we're going to be advocating for. And we'll keep you guys posted. If Management Council comes up with something different, we will we'll have our marching orders.
So with that, on to YDOT in a moment. Senator Pappas, are you kind of hanging between two committees? Okay, if you have something, we'll give you an opportunity when you come back. Okay. So then with that, on to Wyoming Department of Transportation and the issues that have been identified as long-term funding options for WyoLink. And especially with the communities that are tying into that and those issues. The county road construction and maintenance funds, because as funding has gone down for Department of Transportation due to fuel tax reduction, well, not the tax reductions, there just isn't as much fuel being sold. The counties have suffered also, and the towns. So they've taken an equivalent reduction over the past year. So to look at those issues, excuse me, review, possibly update authorized uses per 24-110 and see if there's some areas in there we need to address. And then we have funding for I-80 along with all the general issues with I-80. And there are a lot of them, funding being a major one, but we also have maintenance, repair, in some places reconstruction. We still have some bridge issues that have already started this year, but we need to look at those. Probably do an in-depth review on the department's budget. I think all of us want to see what that budget looks like, and probably be a presentation similar to what they give to appropriations. And that the good co-chairman and I have both served on appropriations and thought that the committee could use that level of detail as we go forward. So, Chairman, please.
Just a quick thought on that front, committee. I think what us two chairmen were really concerned with there is not necessarily a 30,000-foot view, but about a 10-foot view. I mean, I think going forward, we're going to have a lot of difficult conversations, some votes to make with regard to stumping for some highway funding. And I think if we're going to do that, we need to be assured that things are in order and know exactly where the funds are going, how they're being spent, et cetera. So that's the thinking on that one, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So along with that review would be review of the revenue sources, along with review of the disbursements and distributions. So, and I think some of the things we've looked at, we did look at I-80 tolling in the this session, and I think we may want to, along with the funding, revisit some of those issues. The chairman and I have, co-chairman and I have talked on that one. We also have the autonomous vehicle issue, and I think, again, look at that. Those vehicles are coming, whether we like it or not, and we don't know what level, and we need to look at those. And in my discussions I've had with the users, and that it's my intention and the co-chair's intention that we include the users of our highways in these discussions. And that I'd actually like to talk to some of the operations people who have to put trucks and vehicles and light vehicles on the roads. So with that, under general things, we have telecommunicator CPR and 911 dispatch and emergency call takers as a general one. And that's what I have on my list. I think we need to add, if House Bill 254 passes, In its original configuration, there are reports in there, and we need to make sure we address those. And that bill is still in play in the Senate, so I don't know what it'll look like when the Senate is done with it. So, but we'll just put that on the list to make sure that we get those reports and have a chance to consider them. So with that, any Representative Obermuller.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the YDOT under C, YDOT did paid for a maintenance study, and I think I'd like to have that on the list if we could, as an item that they at least present to us on what that was. Thank you.
Okay. That's added in. Now, everyone remember that all of these go through Management Council and that, so that they'll have final say and they'll order them in priority. So Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll ask the question. What's telecommunicator CPR?
Mr. Co-Chairman, I'll let him, you answer that one.
Mr. Chairman and Representative, that came to us from the American Heart Association. And it's an incorporated service related to 911 system, which allows for a call to be made directly to somebody who can help you save a life. That was the request for an interim topic. I think it might be, I don't know. It's in the last page of your descriptor, I think, maybe. Yeah, it's on the bottom of page 4, committee, and yeah, intriguing enough that we wanted to put it on the list for today to take a look at least. And Mr. Garrett will come back across. Oh, he's at the back of the room now. So maybe, Mr. Chairman, when we get done making sure the committee doesn't have any additions, we can go to some comment.
Okay, short. Definitely. Anything else from the joint committee? Anything else? Representative Burt, you're on video, and I know you've had to go back home for some issues and that, and we had discussed a little earlier, but I'll let you make the presentation on the revision on the motorcycle statutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir. I think I'm going to, I'll try to take that off, I think, as a personal bill going forward. If I look into a little bit further and look at the data and see if I want to make that call. And if I do so, I would like to reach out to both chambers, both ours and of course our counterparts on the opposite side of the Capitol, and just try to get some good feedback and information. So I think that's something I can handle on my side and not to burden the interim topic over.
Okay, Representative, and I think that's an excellent strategy. Use the knowledge and the skills on the committee to work through that bill. Because it'll probably have to come right back to this committee anyway. So,
correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else on the committee have any other issues?
Yeah.
Probably. Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I briefly discussed this with Chairman Landon, but what has come up as an issue in our community and maybe in other communities, our aquifer is very near the interstate. And we recently had a semi spill turnover, but what I'm concerned about is transporting hazardous materials on both our interstates and on the rail system, and how that could impact our communities. I don't know if it's an issue for others, but it is for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And I've written that down. Again, I would rather take good notes and have a moment of silence to do it in. And I think that's an excellent topic, considering the the location of the interstates and the railroads going pretty much straight through most of the communities that are built along the interstates and along the rail system. And I think it's a good topic to keep in mind. Anyone else? Representative Obermuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce a new item here if I could. I would like to put on the list construction or Wyoming construction companies, or maybe just construction companies, make them the focus of their testimony on their relationship to WYDOT, the importance to WYDOT to their construction programs, and just get the perspective from the industry that depends on them most.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if you will recall, we had some testimony during this time of there were, of a contractor coming to a legislator with some concerns about WYDOT. So I'd like to just hear more on a broader scope of how the construction company sees WYDOT in that environment.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything? Okay. With that, then I'll open it up to the Zoomies, as we've started referring to people out there in the electronic world. Amanda, any Zoomies with their hands up? Okay, who do we have, please?
I know that guy.
Could you identify yourself, Director?
Hey,
Director Reiner,
members of the
please.
committee, Luke Reiner here, Director of WYDOT. It looks like I'm coming up as Melissa, so that's interesting. Hey, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the chance to just to weigh in here a little bit. Certainly, have heard a bunch of topics come up already for WYDOT. I think I did send you a little note on a couple of these, but the ones, Chairman, that really I'd like to seriously consider the other type of vehicle coming at us, besides the autonomous vehicle, and I agree we need to look at that one, is the electric vehicle. And there's a bunch of ripple effects in my mind on this, the electrification of our roads. And with the current administration, that process is accelerating. And I think we need to take a serious look at it. And I would suspect there's some statute type implementations there. So with respect, would request that you take a look at adding that one to the list.
Okay.
And then,
Director, I was going to say thank you. And along with that, should we add other fuels? What I'm thinking of specifically would be with those electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles.
Mr. Chairman, that's a good thought.
Okay.
Because I think one of the questions always for us is, at least on my mind, is how you capture really the wear and tear done on the roads done by these alternate fuel vehicles. In the case of electric vehicles, it's more than that, because I think to some extent we got to figure out how we encourage people to come to Wyoming with the electric cars to support our economy. But certainly, I think that's a good point. All type of various fuels would be important to look at.
Okay, so Director, go ahead and continue.
And then the other one that comes to mind that I really would, I know it becomes a placeholder, but every year, Chairman, we identify statutes that are out of date, and would just request there be a placeholder, so that if we identify someone, we've already identified several that just we need to address it through the legislative process. So that those are there. The other one that certainly always comes to mind is it as a placeholder is highway safety. there's always issues with highway safety. And then Chairman, I think we have hit funding options. And I just would ask certainly that stay as a placeholder, because I do see, that a key element as we move forward. Mr. Chairman, that would really sort of complete our list.
Okay,
Any questions you might have?
Chairman Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Reiner, thank you for being here this afternoon. I wonder, underneath funding options, if it is too soon for us to take a look at all of our fee structure again. Are you comfortable with where we are? Would it be helpful for this legislative joint committee to do another dive into an across the board look at giving you some authority to increase some fees?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, that would be greatly appreciated. In fact, really under this whole funding options, I'd like to do an A to Z review of every fee associated with this department. There is Chairman Burkhart took a start at it. I believe it was House Bill 241, and maybe we key off there as a starting point. But I think there's, when we looked at all of the fees that are associated with WIDOT, the list is very, very long, and some of those fees have not been updated for 15 or 20 or more years. And so I do certainly think that's relevant. In terms of education also, I think there would be some goodness in, again, and some time spent educating us all on what's going on across this nation. In terms of, I know certainly the ruck became a negative connotation, but I think in terms of education, it would be wise to spend a little bit of time just talking about that. And I'm not sure that has to be an interim topic, but would certainly, with respect, ask that we spend some time just staying current with what our counterparts across this nation are doing to fund roads, because I think it's relevant.
Okay, thank you, Director. We're taking notes. We're taking lots of notes.
Absolutely, Chairman. That's great to see. But I heard your comment about doing one thing at a time.
Yeah, okay.
So
Any other, Amanda, any other Zoomies out there want to say anything? Oh, okay. If there's anyone else on the virtual meeting, if you would like to address the committee, if you'd raise your hand, please. Okay, not seeing anyone, I'll open it up then to the people in the room. Yeah, we're going to go to Senator Ellis first. Senator, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to be with you today. Just give me 1 second while I pull up the information. I submitted online and I wasn't sure, so I'm glad I had a chance to visit with Senator Landon during lunch. But an issue was brought to my attention. Obviously, I live in Cheyenne and we are home to a military base. And several years ago, there was an instance where a victim claimed sexual harassment against the military department, and that was in 2012. And I'm sure you can appreciate after the work you've done this last interim, it was a complicated case because of the nature of it. She was a dual status technician. So during parts of her employment, she was in a military capacity, and another part, she was in a civilian capacity. Nonetheless, the case has been ongoing. There's been a lot of confusion about whether like the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has jurisdiction, how the military's role has played into that. There's been a congressional act to hopefully clarify that in the future. But at the end of the day, when I'm looking at, and I'm happy to send this to the committee, the federal appellate level EEOC agency looked at the case and found that there was, in fact, sexual harassment. They ordered the military department to pay $200,000 in non-pecuniary compensatory damages, as well as back pay back to 2012 when the incident occurred, as well as her attorney's fees, which amount to about $100,000. So I think that this case, is an example of how we don't want to do things in Wyoming. So, there's not a lot we can do after the fact, but I think the concern is how do we make this better going forward? so that victims who bring these complaints maybe don't have to endure nearly a decade of litigation. How maybe the state of Wyoming can avoid costly attorney's fees, back pay, all of these kinds of things. And so, I don't want to offer you a solution. I think there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen. I know our military department and the men and women who serve in that are great people, but sometimes processes need to be looked at. And so I don't know if it'd be appropriate for the legislature to perhaps provide more oversight in that area, receive more updates. But please know, I know I'm not on this committee, but this is an issue that's very important to me. And I think it's important nationally. If you look at headlines in newspapers, there's a lot of conversation about sexual harassment in the military. And we can't just stick our head in the sand and pretend the problem doesn't exist. It would be good to know how many cases are filed, what some of these costs are. And I'm sure our military department has been working to improve on those processes, but receive an update and look for opportunities to maybe strengthen it with some statutory guidance. So that's the ask, Mr. Chairman. And I don't come to you lightly to give you a problem and say, now you fix it and you solve it. Please know that if this is something you're willing to take up, I will be as involved as appropriate to bring you ideas to help facilitate conversation. But this is a very important issue to me. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So Senator, just so I'm clear, excuse me, you would like the committee to at least look at the issue, review it, and see potentially what could be done from the standpoint of the legislature and this committee. Am I correct?
Correct, Mr. Chairman. And maybe at the most basic level, it's require like an annual reporting from the military department. How many of these cases have been filed and what's the status? And we do that in a lot of other instances and a lot of other committees. So that's one possible thing that might require some either legislation or not. But I think there are a lot of potential legislative ideas or not legislative.
Okay, thank you, Senator. And I appreciate your offer to become a ex officio member of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
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 Senator, thank you. And I appreciate your involvement in this. We've had a couple of conversations. I think where we might be able to have some impact committee is with our state agencies. Perhaps we talked about workforce services. I don't know. Our judiciary branch, maybe we can learn something along the way that might prompt us to bring something that might be helpful in the future. And so I appreciate you reminding us of that issue. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, just if I may add one thing and to keep it in your mind of things that we probably need to look at is, what happens to the offender? How many times have they maybe had an instance raised and where are they ending up? Are they just getting reassigned or are they being dismissed? So I do think there's a lot to look at and a lot to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Anyone else? Mr. Winnie, please.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. I actually have three-year items on here with the military affairs I was going to speak to, if that's appropriate for you.
If you have suggestions for interim topics, please.
Yes, the sponsoring recruiting and retention programs for guardsmen. I had occasion to talk during my time in the gallery of the House some years ago with a lieutenant colonel heading up the Guards enlistment programs. And he made several comments to me about things, but the thing that strikes me as I think about this is the Guard needs to start that program with our young people in high schools early, like 9th grade, because our young people need to not only understand the technical nature of the military, but there's things they can do in high school that nobody thinks about that can ace them out of being in the military. For instance, you'll sometimes see kids with those big ear loops. The military considers that self-disfigurement, which can be disqualifying, even though most people look at them and say, oh, well, kids do that. His comment that struck home to me for the most part was something like 75% of our young people coming out of high school aren't eligible for various reasons to come into the Guard. And that's why I talk in terms of whatever they do, it needs to start early. You have the one on temporary delegation of parental authority due to deployment. I think that's quite important. And in my experience in the submarine force, when I deployed, I was incommunicado for periods of, well, the longest one was 110 days. But it's not uncommon for military people to move suddenly. I remember as a young junior officer on a submarine in 1975, I was a ship's duty officer. We were supposed to be in port for another 2 weeks. I got a call at 10 o'clock at night from the captain who said, get the ship ready. We're getting underway in the morning. And then we got the crew back. I got the reactor plant started up, all of those things. So literally a person in the military can be gone in less than 12 hours, given the right kind of circumstances. So putting this kind of stuff in place, I think, is important. Lastly, the sexual harassment issue I intend to follow across my military career. I served as a court-martial member twice on serious sexual issues. I served as a member of a show cause board on a sexual issue, and then I was an Article 15 authority on a ship with a crew of 13 to 1,400, about 300 to 400 women, and the rest men, and had to handle cases of harassment and so on. And so it's my intention to speak up as appropriate if you take the topic up. And lastly, I had some experience, or I should say my wife had some experience, but I was close to what was going on with her, very, very close with the Department of Workforce Services. Subject to your questions, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Winnie? Okay. Mr. Winnie, thank you. Come on up. Please.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Kelly Little. I'm with the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. We have requested 2 of the topics that are on your list today, and I'll just briefly explain a little bit why we've brought those requests. The first topic that we requested is to review the authorized uses and evaluate the statutory structure for the administration and oversight of the County Road Construction and Maintenance Fund, as described in Wyoming Statute 24-110. Our vision for this topic would be to garner this committee's support for a holistic discussion of this road funding program with this committee and other interested stakeholders, such as the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming, WYDOT, and County Road and Bridge Departments, to seek clarity on uses of this funding and possible updates to the program that would make the statute as clear yet flexible as possible. So that's the first topic. And then the second topic that we've requested is to evaluate funding options for the ongoing maintenance and operation of WyoLink, the state of Wyoming's interoperable emergency communication system. We see WyoLink as a fundamentally necessary system for the state for emergency response and safety. And the ultimate goal would be to find a long-term funding solution that keeps the system whole and operable and also protects the necessary users from unnecessary constraints on their budgets. Our proposal would be to convene a stakeholder group to discuss possible options and then bring those to this committee for consideration. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will take any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Little?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, one more time. Anyone else? Okay, with that, I'll close up.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I was looking for the Heart Association to speak up and I would follow, but I looked around and they are gone.
Walking in the park by yourself.
Evidently, Mr. Chairman. Byron Odiko, I'm the Executive Director for the Wyoming Sheriffs and Chiefs. I was approached by the Heart Association to speak briefly on telecommunication as it relates to CPR and where that is. I'm not 100% sure where they want to go with it, but my interest would be in providing you information on that topic. In today's day and age with everyone on a cell phone and access to the scene, telecommunication as it relates to life-threatening maneuvers is near and dear to everyone's heart in the time of crisis. We used to teach a segment at the academy titled Emergency Medical Dispatching. And that was how to walk someone through some of those very serious events, whether it's childbirth, whether it's heart attack, whether it's choking, whether it's poison, dealing with those kinds of emergency medical events and try to walk them through in the process to be able to do that. With this advent of cell phones and much more information at a dispatcher's hands, that is all evolving and ever changing. And I'm not quite sure where the Heart Association would like to go with that, whether that would be mandatory training for communication personnel, whether that would be the offering, how that would quite fit. But should you choose to take that up in today's day and age, like I say, with emergency medical situations, the use of a cell phone, and what options lie before and how best to proceed in that arena, we would stand ready to assist, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Mr. Odokoven? Okay, Mr. Chairman.
So, Mr. Odokoven, thanks for pinch hitting. As you know, about 3 or 4 years ago, I brought a CPR bill. I felt like it was something that was reasonable to expect our high school graduates to have somewhere along the way receive that kind of training. So this one kind of resonates with me. I'm like you. I have not had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Garrett enough to know how extensive he wants to go or where he would like to take us with this. This might be just a good information topic that might involve. Appreciate your reference to some of the training that we already provide. Kind of ties into this WildLink discussion that we got to continue to have that conversation with all of our emergency folks utilizing that network out there. So, Mr. Chairman, it might just be a good information item for one of the meetings.
Great.
Should you choose, Mr. Chairman, we would stand ready to assist you in sharing that information. With a little forewarning, we may be able to provide specificity to some of the questions and help bring you up to speed as to what the requirements are for communication training now and what options are lie and what some of the budget constraints or options are that people are faced in that area.
And Mr. Odokoven, maybe a demonstration.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Easy, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anyone else before I close public testimony want to sneak in under the wire? Okay, with that, I'll close public testimony. So committee, I think we have a fairly extensive list here. We have some other things that you have copies of. And there may be a few more come up before we present this to the management council later in the month. And I know that the good chairman on the Senate side had some comments he would like to make.
Mr. Chairman, first I wondered if it might be useful. It would be to me, I think, to just pick the brain of every one of our committee members. It doesn't have to be real extensive, but I would be really interested if there's any of these topics, maybe which one kind of jumps out at each one of you. So let's start back in the corner. Senator Anderson, what are your thoughts on this list? Anything you'd like to share with the committee?
Well, I just thinking about that telecommunicator CPR thing. I had a store in Gillette. I had 4 gals working there and about 50 mechanics, kind of rough guys. And we did a training on CPR. And the nurse from the hospital, I sat in on the first one with the girls. And the nurse said, if this happens, tear their shirt off. And then she was going to tell us about doing the CPR. I said, my God, don't tell those guys to tear their shirt off the first thing. The girls, you're going to have to be careful not to slip and fall in the shop. So I am really interested in the CPR.
Okay. Thank you, Senator.
Well, there's a story for you. Maybe I'm going to
Continue
regret
quickly.
opening it up to the committee. So, Senator McEwen.
Probably, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to keep looking after the military affairs and the discipline and manual courts martials and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that. Representative Ivar. You gonna pass? Nothing jumps out at you?
Myself at this moment.
Well, we just don't want to have them drop off the bottom of the
Right.
list if you've got one that you want to prioritize, but let's continue on down the line.
We can always assign you something.
Yeah, there we go. Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, it's no surprise that I'm interested in Interstate 80. For those people that aren't aware, as Senator Furphy says, the interstate goes through both Rock Springs and Green River. Not to the extent in Green River because it kind of bypasses the community, but yesterday we had a fatal accident in Rock Springs. And it was at exit mile marker 104 and two semis collided in a construction zone and a very large explosion occurred. And that's right in the middle of town. And so I really, I think that if there are things that we can do, I know we're not going to move the interstate, but if there are things that we can do to help improve the safety within our communities, I think it's important. Obviously, the funding is important. Obviously, I've spoken about alternate routes in some of these areas. So the interstate and Interstate 80 particularly is of interest to me. So thank you.
Representative, thanks for alluding to the topic brought forth by Senator Furphy, and I think that ties in exactly to where you went with that. I think we could learn a lot by some information on hazardous materials and
Mr. Chairman,
loads and.
Mr. Chairman, just following up, that was an explosion and there's video of it and it was on fire for, I don't know how long. I think it was over an hour. The interstate was rerouted through town. All that traffic went through town, which obviously impedes all of the business, all of the local traffic. So, alerts start to go out on social media, stay out of the area. Some people can't stay out of the area. But, it was an explosion. So, and right in the middle of town. And I encourage you, if you'd like, I can send out video. There's plenty of video out there on social media. And we're in committee. Sweetwater Now is a news source. They have a number of posts about it. But like I said, it was 65 miles an hour in a construction zone right in the middle of town where two semis collided, obviously carrying materials that were explosive in some nature. So whether they were hazardous or labeled or placard, I have no idea, but irregardless, it was a danger to our community, our first responders, and obviously all the other traffic was then put in danger. So I think it's a very relevant topic.
Thanks, Representative.
If I could add.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chairman. For those of you who don't know, there's really only one route between Rock Springs and Green River, and that's I-80. From the tunnels to the first exit in Rock Springs is about the only way to get there. And frankly, that's a road that does need looked at. So, I'm sorry.
Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My priorities would be, number one, the safety of our highways and our communities. Number two is the funding for I-80 general maintenance. I think we've got to figure out some sources for that, whatever it is. The next one would be recruiting and retention of guardsmen. And then I would support Senator Ellis on the sexual harassment training or resolution of that issue. Seems to be, as she pointed out, it's big on the national news. And so we ought to deal with it, get ahead of that curve here in Wyoming. So,
Senator, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for going through this exercise. This helps us, Chairman, to kind of prioritize and set these 3 meetings throughout the interim, and really appreciate your feedback. So, Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought it was refreshing that the county commissioners came to us apparently seeking some enhanced oversight over the way that they spend their funds and maintain their roads. So, hey, good on you. Good on you for coming to the experts. But seriously, that is something that is new to me, and I would be very interested in seeing, and also wherever we go for a meeting, it would definitely be worth, I had the opportunity to go through our county maintenance facility, which was quite fascinating, and maybe get a little bit for better knowledge of what they do and how they interact with our state roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Let's go to Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Chairman. The Suez Canal was blocked for a couple of weeks, and I-80 is that for us. But I'm also very concerned about autonomous vehicles, electric and alternate fuels, and how we can make sure they are equitably charged for using our roads and the funding of our roads. That's all I have.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Obermiller.
Well, you might know what I'm going to talk about, but it be the construction industry. We spent a lot of time talking about the viability of the energy industry and our concern for that and how we keep them viable. And we have another industry that we don't talk about much, and we label it as YDOT, but at the end of the day, it's involves our contractors in the state and how we keep that industry viable. These are companies that are in every community, in every county. They provide great jobs, and it's very important that we understand the relationship of the contractors to YDOT and the state. So really pushing for this topic. Thanks.
Representative, thank you for that one. And there's no question that the state plays a huge role all the way across the spectrum in construction. And obviously, we're not going to be able to do what we've been doing. And so I think that's spot on. Good. I want to go to Representative Byrd. You're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to look at the cemetery and making sure that we can preserve that and make sure that it's there for the future and make sure that we can kind of protect that. I also believe that our telecommunications CPR could be a very valuable resource with as wide open as Wyoming is, and a lot of vast open areas. If we can look at expanding that and look and figure out how we can get that to the everyday people that enjoy our outdoor environment, I see that could be a huge topic to look at. I would also agree with Representative Baker and along with Chairman Burkhart that I-80 is an important thoroughfare between Green River and Rock Springs. I personally drove back yesterday to take care of some things here at home, and I probably made it back probably 7:30 through Rock Springs, and there was still, due to that accident, there was still a 4.5 mile long backup of traffic because of that accident or because of that wreck and stuff like that. So when we look at the safety aspect of it, had that been down the road about 4 or 5 miles, if we have to look at any of our emergency response services from Green River to get to the hospital in Rock Springs, I can see that being a life-altering, decision on where we try to move that kind of stuff there. So I think I-80 is a huge topic we need to look at. And then down kind of on the bottom of my list, I would throw a little bone out to our director of YDOT, and I do think that modernization and updating of our statutes is also kind of a important topic, looking those that are outdated, bringing those up to modern times and stuff like that. So that's kind of where my list is, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Appreciate it. Committee, we're running a little short on time. There's some of us have to get to a concurrence meeting
Senator Pappas.
at 1:30, and Senator Pappas is one of them. So Senator Pappas,
Thank
take
you.
it away. And then
Thank you,
we're
Mr.
gonna-
Chairman. Just wanted to share my thoughts too. if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I'm glad,
And
you got
frankly,
back over here. Good deal.
I apologize that I missed half of the conversation since I was bouncing back between the other committees of mine, which is revenue and has to do with a lot of what we actually talk about here, because I think while all of the topics are are very good, and we look at them all, with the military topics and the transportation topics. But I think the number one priority has to be not only I-80, okay? It's our entire infrastructure when it comes to roads, bridges, and transportation infrastructure. I'm really, after the few years I've been on transportation and with the information that I have seen, and all the work I did in the interim with the department on the road usage charge, and subsequent to that, when I understood that probably wasn't ready for prime time, and I did support I was the other co-sponsor on our I-80 tolling bill, which I'm sorry to see it didn't advance this session. But I think that is not only it. I-80 is not only it. Our bridges are really going to suffer. And if we start taking bridges out of our inventory, your communities will not have access to ag, to the mineral industry, to tourism. We have some problems. And then our communities and our counties rely on that as on funding from the state as well for some of those things. And so I think we're going to find that we're going to have as big of a structural deficit in our transportation infrastructure as we do in education. And so that's my biggest concern. And I think that's what we need to tackle as a number one priority, is figuring out, because the gas tax is not sustainable. Something else has to replace it. And so we've got to figure that out. Okay, so that's my number one. Thank you.
Senator, thank you. And I think I speak for everyone in the room. We know that's kind of the big dark cloud, this whole issue of our infrastructure. Committee, I'm going to roll us toward a completion so we can get back upstairs. I wanted to finish with just a few thoughts. I won't let too much of my frustration leak out, but I did want to share some thoughts regarding this session. We didn't have very good luck with our transportation bills. So my challenge to you as we go into this interim, we're here to solve some problems, and we just listed about 20 of them. Let's get our thinking caps on. Let's get our lunch buckets. Let's go to work on this stuff. And let's be ready to support some measures that can really make a difference in this next session. I'm not really interested in working things out of one side and having them hit a brick wall on the other. We're not going to waste our time doing that. So very likely that the chairman and I will require a majority of both of our houses to make sure that we're ready to go to work on these bills that we bring forward. So that's just, that's the bad guy. The good guy is I can't wait to work with you guys. I can't wait to get out across our state. Let's have some fun and really do some things for our constituents out there. So, Mr. Chairman, back to you. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, just to add to that, I think all of the members in here have kind of run up, and I use this lightly, run up against appropriations on your bills and other bills. And once something comes out of appropriations, they handle it as a committee, not as individuals. And I would like to see us start doing the same thing, and that we can also learn to turn our phones off. No, I'm just giving the good representative a hard time in a good natured manner. Mine has done the same thing at the wrong time.
Probably the governor.
Yeah, tell him to wait. So that's it. We'll beat up on these bills that we write in committee. And when they're out of here, I expect that, yeah, we're a team, and that those bills maybe have a few minor petty little technical changes, but that they're good, solid, ready to go pieces of legislation because the state needs it. With that.
Thank you, committee. Appreciate you guys. Nothing is in stone. We will work these up into a good priority list, and we don't know what management council will do. They may decide that we won't take up a particular topic, but I'm optimistic. And the other piece is, I think we'll plan on in-person meetings unless we hear otherwise. So, all right, we'll see you guys. Thank you.